You know what's funny about this podcast? I am the only panel member with a perfect attendance. 41 episodes, 41 appearances. Now, that can only mean one of two things. One, my co-hosts need marginal breaks from me because they secretly despise me. Or two, there is no show without me. I am the show, and my co-hosts are just my entourage. Yeah, I think we're going to go with the second one because there's no one here to disagree with me. Oh yeah, I'm solo today, if you can't tell. Episode number 41 of the Mets Weekly Podcast, 60 minutes of brutal honesty, begins right now. So as for your usual house cleaning, make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel to not miss the premiere of this very podcast every single week at 4 Eastern Time. And also, we just began our 30 projections in 30 days series this week, where there will be a video on our YouTube channel every single day leading up to opening day, where we discuss a specific Mets player and project their outlook going into 2024. So make sure to put on those post notifications to never miss a single episode of that throughout the next month. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter, TikTok, and all of our individual links that are in the description. So, spring training has officially begun. We have baseball games being played in front of our very eyes. Some of them are televised, some of them are not. But as for what the Mets are going with, we have a lot that has been showcased so far. We've had some pitching performances that have been pretty good. We've had some hitting performances that have been pretty good. We've had some surprise performances as well. And then also some tough news that is a really tough pill to swallow, and that's what we're going to get into first. So earlier this week, the Mets announced that star pitcher Kodai Senga will be shut down indefinitely due to a mild posterior capsule strain in his right shoulder. Although the timeline is unclear regarding his return, the Mets do not expect their ace to be ready for opening day, and he will most likely begin the 2024 season on the injured list. Senga went on to receive a PRP injection in his shoulder, as his shutdown from throwing is expected to last 3 weeks and or when the symptoms subside. When asked about the injury, Senga stated that at this point, I'm not going to be able to perform at the highest level, so giving it a little bit of time is the right move. It's really up to the condition of my shoulder, so it's day by day. Post-injury announcement, Mets President of Baseball Operations David Stearns clarified that the Mets do not plan to change course and seek major help outside of the organization, hinting that Tylor Megill, Joey Lucchesi, and Jose Butto are the most likely candidates to replace Kodai Senga come opening day. It's really hard to sugarcoat anything and feel like this does not sting, because it absolutely does. Games were not even played yet, and we already had an announcement that our star pitcher is going on the injured list to start the season. With the crazy part about this, and it almost becomes funny in a way, is that we now have 3 straight seasons where our number one pitcher, our ace, our starting pitcher one, will not be on the active roster for opening day, which is insane. Another insane part about that is the fact that it's 3 different pitchers now. 2022 was Jacob deGrom, 2023, Justin Verlander, and now 2024 being Kodai Senga, which is just unheard of and crazy and so Mets. Let's just be real for a second. But all I can say is that as for the long term, I don't have as much of a concern for Kodai Senga's health, even though there has been some concerns for Senga before he signed his contract last year. We know that there was a Tommy John clause, of course, which kind of had a stipulation in the Mets contract with him with the 5-year deal. It's very tricky to evaluate because of how shoulders can be. Shoulders are very unpredictable. We know kind of more of a process with the elbow, of course, with Tommy John surgery and other surgeries that go on with the elbow, removing bone spurs or whatever. We've seen tons of Mets players get that the last few years. But as for Kodai Senga here, this is a shoulder injury, and it can be very unpredictable. You don't want to mess with it, and that's what kind of went on with arm fatigue, which is what we heard before the MRI. And you do the math, you have about 3 weeks from him not throwing, of course, so we have that timeline. Then you have 6 weeks for him to have his own spring training and his own ramp up. So it's about 9 to 10 weeks away to where we see Kodai Senga on the mound once again. If you were to line that up to a certain day, right now, as I'm currently recording this, it is February 26th. So 10 weeks, you probably see about a late April to early May return for Kodai Senga. I would say that the best bet regarding any setbacks, it's probably going to be like the second week in May when he comes back. I'm not a betting man. I don't gamble at all. But if I were to put my money on something, I would say that it's going to be like the first week of May or the second week of May, something around there. I think that they're going to keep this slow, of course, because, again, Kodai Senga, for those of you who don't know, I mean, again, he was a rookie last year, but he's 31 years old. He is not a young kid. So he has a lot of mileage on his arm from when he was pitching in Japan. So this is definitely going to come with a lot of precaution. And I think that they really need to do that because it's not just the fact of how important he is to this team, but they also need to ramp him up to that certain state where he doesn't have any discomfort because he was just ramping up when his arm couldn't take it. So he was probably going from one level to another. So he's going to go from 3 weeks to not throwing to trying to ramp up in 6 weeks. So maybe I personally think that it's going to be a little bit more than 6 weeks after that 3 weeks that he can't throw because of the injury. He got so sudden when he was just starting to ramp up. I think they're going to go a little bit slower than you want, but I think that you're going to get a good amount of innings from Kodai Senga. It's not that big of a long-term concern, but short-term right now, there's definitely some holes in the rotation that you're kind of concerned about right now because you have a lot of question marks, you have a lot of injury history, unreliable pieces, you have some inconsistent pieces. You have a conglomerate of different types of issues that you can be concerned about with the Mets rotation. The main concern is pretty much just the fact that they don't have their number one starter. Now, Luis Severino, he's been an ace caliber pitcher in the past, hasn't been that in the last, 4 or 5 years. He hasn't been healthy. Sean Manaea has been a frontline starter before. And then you have the rest of the rotation, which is Jose Quintana, who he's not an ace by any means. He's a solid back-end arm, give you 5 to 6 innings, give you some quality stuff out there. Adrian Hauser, he's a number 5, number 4 at best. And then you also have your depth pieces in Tylor Megill and Jose Butto and Joey Lucchesi. You also had Max Kranick make a start this week for the Mets, and he did pretty well, so maybe he's in the conversation for that. It's obviously going to go by committee. I don't think that you're going to have a real full-length set rotation. You're going to probably get a 6-man rotation like we've been talking about all year, and it's pretty much the expectation because I'm pretty sure David Stearns did hint at it a lot. You're going to get a 6-man rotation, but you're going to see a rotation that is going to be rotating a lot more, trying to work around the innings that are going to be missed by Kodai Senga for the first month or two of the season. There's a strong possibility that you could see, while Kodai Senga is hurt, you could see about 8 different starting pitchers make their start. You're going to get a start from Tylor Megill. You're going to get a start from Jose Butto. You're going to get a start from Joey Lucchesi. Max Kranick could possibly get a start. And then you go into the minor leagues where, guys who have not made their debut yet, like Mike Vassell. I think that you're going to see it pretty much be approached with quantity as for quality. And that's the main reason as to why I say that, because David Stearns specified, he said, well, we're not going after anybody in free agency to replace Senga as a quick fix or anything. That tells me one or two things. One, they are happy with the depth that they have in their rotation, and they're going to do this with quantity, like I just said, and they're going to try and eat the innings that they're missing from Kodai Senga in the first month. Or that means that they are not concerned long-term with the Kodai Senga injury. Now, again, like I said, there's no timetable. Again, there's a wait and see regarding any setbacks, but I think that there is confidence that they're going to get a good amount of games from Kodai Senga. Now, the typical season, you get 30, 32 starts from starting pitcher fully healthy. I think that they'll get 22 to 24, 25, maybe. You're going to see some terms in the rotation be skipped over. The thing is that I don't think that they think this is a long-term concern unless there's a reason as to have that long-term concern. And I don't really think that they're going to go external at all. To be honest, after all of these moves that they made, Severino, Manaea, and Hauser being the main pieces that they added to the rotation, after that, the only external piece that I saw them bringing in was Brandon Woodruff. Brandon Woodruff went back to the Brewers, and that doesn't really help the whole situation at all because, as we all know, Brandon Woodruff is not going to be pitching this year. So that was the only guy that they saw the connection to. Obviously, there was the Milwaukee connection. It kind of lined up with the 2025, where they kind of try to go a little bit farther into free agency and try to compete in 2025, where this is a wait-and-see year, and they see where they're at in 2024, address it at the trade deadline. But I just don't really see them adding at all, and it makes sense as to why, because obviously they want to give some leash to the young pieces. Now, of course, you do have some pitching prospects that have yet to pitch yet in spring training, have yet to pitch at the major league level. But, you do have multiple options where you can kill this with quantity and have a six-man rotation of, Severino, Minaya, Quintana, Hauser, and then the next two, you pick 2 of 3 where it's, let's say Lucchesi and Megill, or Butto and Megill, or Butto and Lucchesi. Like, you're going to see some of those options be exercised out. And I would not be surprised if all 7 of them make starts for the Mets before Kodai Senga comes back. I really would not be surprised with that. Definitely puts a bigger eye on a lot of the starting pitching and a lot of the starting pitchers, who were aces before or were frontline pieces before, such as Luis Severino, or, just consistent starters like Jose Quintana. It's going to be something to watch during spring training because obviously you're not going to replace the production of Kodai Senga. You're not going to get 166.1 innings, I think it was last year, from Kodai Senga of complete ace level brilliance, where you're getting, top 5 Cy Young type of quality. You're not going to get that from any of the pitchers that are healthy right now for the Mets. But what you will get is obviously innings pitched. You're going to try and combine the innings and not just try to combine the starts. They might stack on some starters on top of each other with this so-called 6-man rotation. You could see something like that where, you have all 7 of those major league starters on the opening day roster where, you can stack some bulk innings out of the bullpen, and you can have 2 long relief guys, but they also can make starts and rotate in and out of the bullpen. That could be a possibility of something that could happen where Butto and Lucchesi go into the bullpen, and then Megill is the 6th starter. If Megill can't go that far into the game, you bring in Butto, you bring in Lucchesi, something like that, and you can just reverse that in because we've all seen guys like Megill and Lucchesi and Butto struggle to go past like the 4th or 5th inning sometimes. So it's hard to get length from those guys, but if you can combine the length from these guys, that probably will be your best bet to get the innings that you can replace without Kodai Senga here. And I think that's what they're going to look at. Again, I don't see any of the pitching prospects as options as of right now. Vassell could be somebody that gets looked at before Kodai Senga comes back. But other than that, I think that, the Scotts, the Tidwell and Tyler Stewart, who I don't think is really much of a starter, Dominic Hamill, I don't think that they get really that much of a look. I think that's a little bit too much of a panic move, obviously. I think they'll get their footing in the upper levels of the minor leagues, and then they'll obviously evaluate that later in the season and see if they can get a start out of them. I just don't want to see pitching prospects be called up because of a injury. I want them to be up here because they are ready for the major leagues. And I think that there's a little bit of time for most of the pieces on the Mets timeline for their prospects to actually make their major league debut. I mean, there's a few pieces internally. Could see Justin Jarvis, something like that, but I would not put that much of a bet on it. I think that they're okay with what they have right now. And again, they still have to evaluate it, throughout all of spring training. And we'll see what happens. We have yet to see most of these guys pitch, but we have seen 2 of the guys pitch, and that's what we're going to get into next. Where this week, 2 of the Mets candidates for the starting rotation made their 2024 spring debut this week. On Saturday, it was Tyler Megill for the spring opener, going 2 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1 earned run, 0 walks, a hit by pitch, and 3 strikeouts on 39 pitches. Megill's fastball sat at 94 to 95 and top 96, with his slider reaching the low 90s and also showing off his brand new splitter. On Sunday, Jose Butto got the start and was very solid, going 2 innings pitched, 2 hits, 0 earned runs, 0 walks, and a strikeout on 39 pitches. Butto's fastball sat at 94 to 95 and top 96, and he also showed off his brand new cutter with over 2,600 RPMs sitting in the mid-80s. Both Megill and Butto will get an extended look this spring, with the injury news to Kodai Senga, as well as the expectation of the Mets using a 6-man rotation for the majority of 2024. Now, this was pretty impressive to start off spring with 2 solid pitching performances, 2 starting arms that you possibly are going to see in your rotation, obviously making it a little more likely with the Kodai Senga news. I mean, I obviously want to start with Tylor Megill because he was the first guy to pitch. Also, I'm a big fan of Tylor Megill. For those of you who don't know, hi, my name is Carson. Obviously, last year, Tylor Megill had very inconsistent season. He showed some of his best, and then he showed his very, very worst. The thing about Tylor Megill is that he just was a different pitcher every single time he took the mound. It's either the velocity was consistent, the velocity started off very high, then it was out. Then he tried to some kind of like contact manager. Then he tried to get ground balls, and then he tried to get more strikeouts. And then he comes back after getting sent down from AAA. Then he looks like he can take the starter workload. Then he can't. He's hitting 99 again, but he still has the crappy slider. So it was just very odd last year. And, we need to obviously find some consistency with Tylor Megill. Obviously, he's going to come from the back end of the rotation, but I think that there is still potential there, and I really still think that he has some good stuff. I think that he just needs to really apply it, and I think that he did it fairly well this week. He started off a little bit rocky, but I will say, and this is not really me being like the biggest Tylor Megill fan, this is me just like stating facts. He did give up a run. And listen, I know everybody is very concerned about the ERA in spring. The main reason I say this is because every single batted ball against Tylor Megill in that game was all under 75 miles an hour exit velocity. He was giving up so much soft contact bullshit, nothing to worry about. And that was one of the main concerns last year, again, because of a lot of the hard contact. That really makes us look as to the command being a lot better. He wasn't missing as many spots, which is good to see. Obviously, we still need to see more. 5 fastball whiffs and 1 whiff from his slider. Now, his slider actually is in the low 90s again. He's got that hard slider that he had on that opening day start in 2022, able to locate it in like that lower quadrant, kind of that lower third of the strike zone. The first slider that he threw, it was a little tough. I'm pretty sure he hit somebody with it. And then the next 3 were pretty good. They were competitive pitches. So, he has a little bit less spin on it, but if you can have some extra velocity and some extra break on it, it looked pretty tight as compared to what it was, where it was just a little bit too much movement that it just became very obvious to hitters. The splitter, I wasn't really paying attention to it, but I know he's been talking about that, the whole American spork thing. I don't know if this was a misread, but StatCast has him throwing a cutter as well at 93 miles an hour. He threw 1 cutter. I don't know if it's defined as a cutter, but if he does have a cutter, that would be something else. I'm not going to lie. That would be a fantastic bridge pitch for him. And then also he can have a little bit more separation between this fastball and the slider. I personally think that he looked fantastic. Obviously he gave up the 1 run, but again, like I said, soft contact, a lot of bullshit around him. For some reason, everybody likes to play defense around everybody except Tylor Megill. Only got 40 pitches, and it looks like that was the case for Butto as well, and I'll get into Butto too. I mean, Butto looked good as well. I mean, I have no complaints with him either. Obviously, I'm a little bit more high on Megill, but I will say one thing about Butto. He also seemed to have added a cutter to his repertoire, and he threw a little bit more than Megill did. He's got a little bit more spin to it. 2,600 RPMs. That is something, because I'm not going to lie, he did have a very difficult time last year. He did have a very difficult time last year kind of locating that curveball. He was really leaving that over the plate a lot. So now that he can kind of pair that up with a cutter from, I don't know if it's supposed to be a slider. Fastball was sharp. I'm not sure if we're defining it as a slider or a cutter, but both of them look better. There's a lot more spin on them, which is really good, and that really can help him get a lot more strikeouts. A little bit harder contact as compared to Tylor Megill, but, Butto looked fantastic, and I think it's a plus for both of them, and we're going to need that, obviously. Whether you think it is a competition between Butto and Megill, we're going to need both of these guys to contribute. So I can tell you right now, they were both fantastic spring debuts. If I were to give the upper hand to somebody, I probably still would give it to Megill. That's just me. I'm a Megill guy. I'll tell you right now, Jose Butto looks a lot different than he did last year. There's a little bit more life to his pitches, which I really do like. I'm glad that he worked on that. It seems like he's poised to get more whiffs this year, which is really good. And I'm glad that we are seeing a more explosive Jose Butto. He's a very fly ball heavy guy. You kind of need a little bit more explosiveness to attack hitters when you are a fly ball pitcher. Both of them passed the first test. Obviously, it is 2 innings. There's still stuff for them to go over. They still need to gain a little bit more consistency. We need to see them a little more stretched out. It's definitely a plus for the Mets from both sides. Now, earlier this week, Mets manager Carlos Mendoza gave a pretty clear outlook for the Mets outfield in 2024. Mendoza stated that although it depends on the situation and matchups, if everyone is healthy and producing, you will see Harrison Bader in center field and Brandon Nimmo in left field a majority of the time this season. Last offseason, the Mets re-signed Brandon Nimmo to an 8-year, $162 million contract to be the Mets center fielder for years to come. But when asked about the switch to left field, Nimmo revealed that President of Baseball Operations David Stearns personally asked him about his thoughts about moving to left field with standout defensive center fielders available on the free agent market. Nimmo said that he told Stearns that his goal at this point in my career is to win a World Series. If you think that creating a better outfield defense or adding these guys to our roster is going to help our chances of winning a World Series, then I'll do whatever it takes to do that. Then during their offseason, the Mets proceeded to sign Harrison Bader to a 1-year, $10.5 million contract. Other outfield options outside of starting right fielder Starling Marte include Tyrone Taylor, DJ Stewart, and spring invites such as Trace Thompson and Ben Gamel, along with the anticipated debut of top prospect Drew Gilbert later this year, who will be starting the 2024 season in AAA Syracuse. I don't really think there's much of a surprise here. I think once Harrison Bader was signed by the Mets, it seemed like Brandon Nimmo was moving to left field. And the thing is that I was okay with the Mets doing that. I think that the Mets needed to preserve an 8-year investment that they obviously made last offseason. And even though Nimmo has stayed healthy, and even though Nimmo has been on the field recently, these last few years, he's going into his 30s, and there is going to be injury concern. And I 100% agree with that. Would I have done that with Harrison Bader? Probably not. I probably would have went Michael A. Taylor. In my opinion, that's something that I would have done. But again, water under the bridge at this point. Now, obviously, this is a guaranteed plus in the outfield for Harrison Bader. Harrison Bader is one of the best defensive outfielders in all of baseball. And even though probably a lot of Mets fans would have liked him as a 4th outfielder, he is going to be starting. Now, I've already established, I've gone on the record multiple times, I've talked on this podcast before, of where I'm okay with Bader being on this team as long as he's batting 9th, batting 8th, in the bottom 3rd of that lineup. If they want to bat him a little bit higher against left-handed pitching, because I know that they really value him as a lefty killer, because he has done that for his entire career, obviously. But I think that the way that this outfield is going to be constructed, it makes sense, obviously, to have Nimmo play left field, but I also would not be opposed to putting Nimmo in right field and then moving Starling Marte to left field as well. I have not talked about it yet, but I do want to address it here. Just maybe a few times where they would move Starling Marte to left field, where they can, have a little bit less on his lower body. Obviously, with the injury history that he has had recently and throughout his entire career. He's 35 years old. We don't know what's going to go on with him. We have still yet to see him play in spring training, along with Nimmo and Bader, who have yet to make their spring debut. The thing is that I want to see the Mets, whether it is preserving health or whether it is for defensive advantage, I do want to see the Mets with these 3, such as Nimmo, Bader, and Marte. I'd like to see them kind of rotate them in and out. The only combination I don't want is Starling Marte in center field. I think that time is past. He is way too injury prone to be covering that sort of range. Right field and left field are fine with him. I'm okay with Bader in right field if you want to put Nimmo in center field or something like that. But I do want to see Marte be protected in both of those corners. Because, again, a lot more athleticism is needed in right field. If his bat is red hot, because we all know Marte always has those hot streaks sometimes, put him in left field. Yes, Nimmo does not have the strongest arm to play right field, and maybe you put Bader in right field and you can put Nimmo in center field, because Nimmo, I feel like he's going to prepare to be in center field this year. Obviously, he's going to get appearances in center field. It's just not going to be his everyday job. He's going to play left field. And the main reason why I'd like to see them rotate this outfield a little bit throughout the season is because obviously the injury history is a concern. Whether you take Drew Gilbert out of the equation, whether you want to talk about Tyrone Taylor or whatever, you are relying on these three guys as your starting outfielders as of right now, as of this current moment going into opening day. That's how I'm looking at it. At one point, one of them is not going to be 100%. Putting their hot bat in the lineup, hypothetically, because we don't know if they're going to be red hot or not, put them in the less danger position of left field. All three of them have injury concerns. So don't just say, this guy isn't healthy, let's just put him at DH. Because I don't want to see Nimmo DHing. I don't want to see Marte DHing specifically. And I don't want to see Harrison Bader DHing. I think that they need to rotate these in and out to kind of balance out the workload for the injury concerns, and I want to see them try and do that. There doesn't seem to be that many signs of Marte playing anything but right field. I do want to see them try and do that to maybe keep everybody healthy, keep everybody fresh, keep everybody going, because, again, there's injury concern throughout those three outfielders in Marte, Nimmo, and Bader. And I want to keep them healthy as much as I can. Now, even though I'm sure a lot of people want to see Drew Gilbert up here, maybe they prefer Tyrone Taylor over Harrison Bader. Maybe they prefer Trace Thompson over Harrison Bader just because he hit a grand slam in one of the spring training games this week. You just need to keep this into consideration as to where you don't really have any guaranteed positions in that outfield, kind of how they created it with bringing in Harrison Bader and moving Nimmo in the position he was paid to do to left field. I don't think that they need to commit to anything in the outfield. I think that I'm okay with all three of them playing all three positions in the outfield except Starling Marte in center field. Like that's the only way the only combination I don't like. I think that they do need to be a little bit cautious about this, where it's okay to put any of the three in left field. Not to mention the insurance you have defensively with Tyrone Taylor, who also can play all three positions. Nimmo, I think, can play all three positions. Bader can play all three positions. Marte should be playing the corners. I do want to see the Mets kind of retool this and keep everyone healthy, keep everyone fresh in that outfield, because there is concern there, whether it is age, whether it is injury history. So let's say Starling Marte plays 10 straight games in right field, put him in left field for one game or 2 games or something like that. Because I understand wanting to preserve an investment like Nimmo, who just signed a 8-year deal last offseason, but also you have Starling Marte, who is making $20 million this year and next year as well. We're trying to avoid those soft tissue injuries as much as they can, and I think that the best way to do that is to rotate in and out of the outfield, excluding Marte being in center field. And I think that that's a good way for the Mets to keep all three of them fresh and all three of them healthy and get the most out of them, their capacity. Now, one of the biggest topics all season will continue to be the DH conversation. With Mark Vientos and DJ Stewart at the top of the list all offseason, the Mets also added 2 other DH options that could make the competition a little more interesting. The first addition was Ji-Man Choi signing a minor league contract that could go up to $3.5 million if he makes the opening day roster. Choi is now 32 years old and is coming off a rough year in Pittsburgh, where he posted a .624 OPS with 6 homers and 117 plate appearances. Despite the down year, Choi is a career 113 WRC plus hitter and has created a 20 to 30 home run pace throughout every season of his career since 2015. The Mets also signed Luke Voit to a minor league contract with an invite to spring training. Voit is now 33 years old and spent part of 2023 in the Mets organization, posting a 1,058 OPS with 14 home runs and 164 plate appearances with AAA Syracuse. Throughout his career, Voit has battled multiple injuries, but when he's on the field, he gives any lineup a big power boost. Voit and Choi will be featured for the Mets all spring training long, as they both look to win a spot on the Mets 2024 opening day roster. Now, this is a very interesting situation because we obviously saw the Mets kind of commit to Mark Vientos as this DH option going into this year to take the job and run with it with the DH position. You also had DJ Stewart be brought back as a possible insurance option, who had a hot stretch in August into like the first week of September or whatever. It's not what he's been for his entire career. He's probably never going to repeat something like that. It was good that they brought him back. And now you bring in Choi and Voit, a little bit older but veteran pieces. I like the insurance that they have built around Mark Vientos, of pieces that have definitely showed stuff in the past and can kind of hold you to the trade deadline until you address this whole situation full head on. Whether you believe Mark Vientos can be that DH, if he's not the DH, then you can give some at-bats to one of these three other guys. I think that that's a good way to look at it because obviously Mark Vientos has not proven anything in the major leagues, whether we like something from him or not. And I like Mark Vientos. I think the possibility where he can be a really good major league hitter, but he hasn't proven anything yet. Choi has, and Voit has. Stewart, it's a little bit abbreviated, but we did see him do it in Mets uniform last year. Stewart, Voit, and Choi, the three of them, I think that they are competing for one roster spot to be a bat off of the bench. I think that DJ Stewart kind of has the uphand as of right now to be that type of backup because he can play the outfield, and that's something that Voit and Choi can't do. I think Voit did it like once or twice in his career, but he's 33 years old now. He's not going to be doing it at all. Choi has only played exclusively first base, which he is actually really good at, and could be a little bit of insurance where you kind of catch lightning in a bottle in case Mark Vientos struggles. From what we have seen from a lot of the signings that they have made, the Mets are giving a lot of gateway to their young players, their internal pieces who have yet to prove anything but have a lot of upside. Mark Vientos is one of them. Obviously, I would have gone after the big bat, such as the Jorge Soler or the Teoscar Hernandez. I would have done that, sure, but I understand them wanting to give the leash to Mark Vientos, and I've said this before. They're keeping the insurance behind him, which is really something that I do like, and I'm glad that they've put depth at this position. They are options that have proven that they can do it before and possibly be a feared hitter behind Alonso. Now, if I were to talk about the leaderboards for this job, I'd say that Choi is probably the more ideal hitter overall that you'd probably want here. Luke Voit is probably like the more ideal power threat. The thing about Voit is that he does chase a lot, and that's something that is kind of like a big no-no with being power protection these days, because obviously my hitters that I prefer obviously is somebody that doesn't chase and sacrifices that contact of swinging at strikes for power. And that's something that Voit is able to do, but he has not been able to really walk as much recently. He chases a lot. As for Choi, he's a different case where he doesn't chase a lot. He gets a lot of solid contact. He pulls the ball a lot. So he's a more complete hitter, but Voit, I would say, he's a more swing and miss piece as compared to Choi. But both of them, I think, are both solid options if you need them to back up somebody like Mark Vientos. I still like DJ Stewart. I think that he's like a solid, league average hitter. Like there's a place for him on this team. And if you guys want to know a little bit more information about DJ Stewart and our thoughts on him going into the season, we actually just, at this current moment, dropped a video about him, 30 projections in 30 days. So if you want to go check that out, go ahead. It's all low risk, high reward pieces that they've brought in that can give you some production at the plate that you've kind of been missing. Now, of course, would it made sense to get somebody like Jorge Soler and get somebody like JD Martinez? Yes. But I don't think that it would be possible to give playing time to a young player with one of them here. It'll be interesting to see because all four of these guys have shown a decent amount of power and power upside. And, all of them last year, all of them had their 20 to 25 home run pace in 650 plate appearances. So, and even though the spotlight is going to be on Mark Vientos to kind of take the job from everybody, I like the hitting profiles of all four of these hitters. All four of them I could see as quality DH options in a pinch. All four of them. Whoever is ahead in the four-horse race, that'll obviously go day to day with spring training and how that goes along. We're obviously in the first week of games, so there's plenty of time to see what you can get out of this position. and I like the current situation that they're in. Now, obviously, another huge story that will be floating all season long will be the pending free agency of Mets star first baseman Pete Alonso. Mets owner Steve Cohen had some very strong words about this situation going forward. In an interview on the Meet at the Apple podcast hosted by Howie Rose, Cohen stated that the Mets want to keep him. Alonso is an important part of our team today and hopefully in the future. We know the fans feel strongly about him, and I'm not tone deaf. I totally understand the fans' love of Pete. I hope he hits 55 home runs and makes it so difficult for me in free agency. I would call that a great outcome. Alonso is now 29 years old, set to become a free agent after the 2024 season, represented by baseball's high roller, Scott Boras. All right, so these are some very interesting comments regarding from Steve Cohen, because I will say that it's happened a few times before where he's gotten a little overconfident before things have actually happened. And obviously he's spoken publicly on things before he shouldn't have, or, maybe he's joking a little bit and playing with fire a little bit. I will say right here, I like what he said, because I think that, with the New York media and how it is and how it kind of overreacts to a pinpoint or cuts things out or, sees things a different way or escalates something to a point where it did not have to be escalated to. I think that this is a perfect way to kind of settle it, where New York, we know you're loud and we know that there's going to be huge backlash when something happens. There's a lot of micro watching on a lot of their sports teams because they're passionate fans, and that's how it is going to be. It will never change. But for Cohen to basically say, I'm not tone deaf, I realize how important this guy is to me, he basically just told all of Mets Twitter, all of Mets media, he said, shut the fuck up, I've got this. That's what he literally just said to you. He will handle this situation, and he will try to keep Pete Alonso here long term to the best of his abilities. And I think that that's what he just basically said. Could some people be upset with something like that, where basically he just kind of told off the fans backhandedly? Maybe, but I will say right now, it's good to have an owner in tuned with the whole situation than an owner that doesn't address it at all. And he addressed it. He knows that Pete Alonso is a free agent. He knows how important he is to this lineup. He knows that if Pete Alonso isn't hitting, this team is not hitting. This offense runs through Pete. He's a leader. He's loved in that clubhouse. He wants him here long term. Does that mean guaranteed he is going to extend him? No. But do I believe that he's going to do everything in his power to keep Pete Alonso? Absolutely. And I think that that's something that kind of needs to be reassured with a lot of Mets fans with this whole situation, because, of course, Scott Boras, you never know what he's got up his sleeve. He's Scott Boras. That's how he is. But we have seen, obviously, interest from both sides wanting to keep him long-term. They are committed to keeping him long-term, and I think that you need a little bit more reassurance, and the best reassurance you can get is from the man up top running the show, not David Stearns, not Carlos Mendoza. You don't need to hear comments from Jeff McNeil on MLB Network or Brandon Nimmo or Francisco Lindor. You don't need to hear that. If we hear it from Steve Cohen, directly from Steve Cohen, we know that he means it, and that's something that he has really established. He basically just told you, I got this. Don't worry. We are going to try our best, our very best, to keep this man long-term with the Mets. We know how important he is to you, and he said that directly to the fans, and that's before his free agency even started. He went out on a limb, said this in public when they have talked about wanting to keep a lot of things behind closed doors. He saw how loud Mets fans are about keeping Pete long-term, that he said, okay, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm going to address this. I'm going to tell you that I'm going to try my very, very best to keep him long-term. All of you can quiet down. Let's relax. Are they going to relax? Absolutely not. This is how New York media will be. There will continue to be articles about Pete Alonso wanting to be a Cub, Pete Alonso wanting to go to the Astros, Pete Alonso wanting to go to the White Sox. There's going to be tons of articles about that, because that's just how Scott Boras does it. That's how Scott Boras handles the market. But at the end of the day, I don't see, personally, at this current moment, I'm not worried about Pete Alonso's free agency. Obviously, I'm worried about the season coming. I expect no team to pursue him more than the New York Mets this offseason. And that's how I have looked at it. That's how I look at it now, because there has not really been a sign as to that not happening. I really hope that the Mets do make progress on an extension this season. Again, I've said this before. It doesn't seem like they've had the conversations, but I'd like to see them make progress, of course, this year. And, Pete Alonso has made it public as well, again, about his extension, where he's willing to negotiate during the season. It's not like how Lindor was negotiating this during the season, and that the Mets are obviously have a bigger opportunity because of Pete's kind of loyalty to the Mets, of how it's been for the last 5 years. He likes being a Met, again, like we say, maybe a little too much. And I think that he's definitely opened the door for a possibility of the Mets maybe giving him an extension during the season. Do I think it happens? No. I think that he's going to hit the free agent market. I think that he deserves to do it. He has had a fantastic career so far, and he deserves to get paid. But I personally am not worried about the future of Pete Alonso at this current moment. I don't think he's leaving. I think he will stay here long term. It's just going to happen a little bit later than you want it to. We all know that Mets fans want to extend Pete. They want to keep him, whether you want to trade him or think he's a clubhouse cancer, whatever you're listening to with sports media. All of it is just white noise at this point until the Passan bomb drops, pretty much, of where Pete Alonso will be playing for the rest of his career. As for Steve Cohen, don't say that he doesn't hear you. Don't say that he is ignoring you. Don't say that he doesn't care, that he's half-assing it. He knows how important Pete Alonso is to this team, and he's going to do everything in his power to try and extend him. I'm not saying he's going to extend him, but I'm saying that he's going to do everything in his power to keep him in New York long term. There is not many owners on the bad side of their fans that can get away with saying something like that. But when there's a guy like Steve Cohen, who we've seen flex his wallet before, you kind of have to sit there and believe him. Whether something else changes in the process of this from now to the offseason, I am very confident that Pete Alonso will remain a Met for the rest of his career. Now, baseball games are officially being played once again, so that means that we can now bring back everyone's favorite segment, Studs and Duds, which is one player that we like to give flowers to who has been playing very well, and then one who's been playing like absolute shit, and we would like to lock the door behind them. Now, obviously, I'm the only one here. For a special edition of this, me doing this solo, I'm going to do one position player and one pitcher for each. So there's going to be 2 studs and 2 duds. And then obviously we'll do it from the usual formula with my co-host back here next week. Let's do the position player stud. And the one I'm going to give it to is Alex Ramirez. Alex Ramirez coming off of a really tough year in High A Brooklyn. Former top prospects. Currently, I think he's ranked about 12 or whatever. He definitely dropped. He did not have a good season, but so far he has looked good. In the outfield, defensively, he's looked good. On the base pass, he played in the first 2 games of spring. Now, this is being recorded before the 4th game of spring, so I don't know if he does anything in that game. I'm sure you guys will let me know. It looks like he's handling velocity a little bit better. The swing decisions were better. We did not see him chase as much, so that was good. Again, there's tons of upside with this kid. He's 21 years old. Maybe he could gain a little bit more muscle, of course. He's 6'3", still can grow into that frame. I do want to see him pull the ball a little bit more, but I know that he's more guaranteed to be a dead pull hitter. That's kind of like his thing. It all really has to do with swing decisions. And so far, it's looked good. Now, listen, it's a small sample size, but so far, Alex Ramirez gets my stud position player of the week. Now, as for pitcher, I'm going to go with Nate Lavender, who had a fantastic debut a few days ago. Came in, pretty sure it was 11 pitches, struck out the side. Now, listen, a lot of people like Nate Lavender a lot, and I didn't understand why. He just seemed like this soft tossing lefty. He's got some decent movement on his fastball, plus slider as well. I was kind of confused as to why he was getting so many whiffs in the minor leagues, and now I kind of get it. There's a little explosiveness there. He's a low 90s guy, but he does come from a certain slot. I saw a lot of Mets fans talking about him, being the next Billy Wagner or something. Let's pump the brakes on that, but he was very impressive. Obviously, it was 1 inning, but I definitely want to give a kudos to him because, this is somebody that maybe he is a bullpen arm down the line or something. He can maybe fill in a space or whatever. It's good to see if you have those options open, and so far, he has pitched pretty well. I've seen a lot of people rave about this guy recently. Again, like I said, I didn't understand it, but now I'm kind of starting to learn as to why people like Nate Lavender a little bit. Solid lefty arm. Maybe we see that in the major leagues this year. Let's get to the duds. Position player dud. I'm going to start with Brett Baty because he has not lifted the ball yet. He has had, I believe, 4 or 5 plate appearances. He has not lifted the ball once, not even an infield pop-up, and that has been his problem since the very beginning. He talked about making adjustments this offseason. Not seeing it yet. He needs to prove something, or we're going to be having a pretty tough conversation, just waving at a lot of pitches, very overmatched against pitching, and then just pounding the ball into the dirt. And now for the dud pitcher, I would go with Josh Walker. Now, Walker came in on the spring opener, and he just was a mess. The fastball velocity was up, but he just couldn't get any control over it. I'm pretty sure he gave up quite a few unearned runs or whatever, but he could not command his curveball whatsoever. Now, obviously, it's one bad outing. He is still on the Mets 40-man roster. I'm sure he'll get another chance, of course, but it definitely was not a good outing for Josh Walker. But again, all of these, the 4 of these below me right here, overreactions. They are all overreactions. We are 3-4 games into spring training now, but these guys, obviously with games being played, and those are the guys I'm going to pick so far for spring training. Your rapid fire stories for this week. The Blue Jays have signed former Mets designated hitter Daniel Vogelbach to a minor league deal. Vogelbach was non-tendered by the Mets earlier this offseason and was acquired at the 2022 trade deadline in exchange for Colin Holderman from Pittsburgh. The Blue Jays have also signed former Mets infielder Eduardo Escobar to a minor league contract. Escobar was traded to the Angels by the Mets at the 2023 trade deadline in exchange for minor league pitchers Coleman Crowe and Landon Marchessault. The Mets have signed right-handed pitcher Diosmerky Taveras to a minor league contract. Taveras spent 2023 in the Astros organization, posting a 4.66 earned run average in 58 innings pitched across the high A and double A level. The Mets have claimed left-handed pitcher Colton Ingram off of waivers from the Tigers. Ingram is 27 years old and pitched just 5.1 innings last season in the majors with the Angels. The Mets have also transferred left-handed pitcher David Peterson to the 60-day injured list as the corresponding move. Mets right-handed pitcher Shintaro Fujinami will be flying home to Japan to attend to a personal matter. The Mets still expect him to return soon in plenty of time to ramp up for opening day. Mets top pitching prospect Christian Scott is expected to begin 2024 in AAA Syracuse. Scott was remarkable last season, posting a 2.57 earned run average and 87.2 innings pitched across 3 levels of the Mets minor league system. Parting words for episode number 41. I'm glad to see baseball back, even though we had the unfortunate news of Kodai Senga, which stings, but hopefully it's not a long-term thing. Hopefully he's healthy and back on the field in no time. Still tons of players that we need to see. Of course, we still have yet to see Brandon Nimmo play in spring games because we all know that he has the slow ramp up as per usual. Harrison Bader, we still have not seen. We still have not seen Starling Marte. We have yet to see tons of different pitchers like Sean Manaea, Adrian Hauser, who I believe is pitching this week. Luis Severino, we have not seen. I can't wait to see the return of Edwin Diaz, of course, my guy. Tons of stuff to look forward to during spring training. So that should be it for this week's episode of the Mets Weekly Podcast. Follow us on all of our individual links. The links are all in the description. Follow us on Twitter, TikTok. Also, make sure to put on those post notifications because every single day we are posting a video about a certain Mets player and projecting them for the 2024. We are calling it 30 projections in 30 days, leading all the way up to opening day. We're going to have another episode posted the same day that this comes out as well. This usually premieres at 4 p.m. Eastern time, is going to be out around 6:30, 7 o'clock. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe. We don't say that enough, but you really should. Be awesome if you did. And we'll see you guys next time. Let's go Mets. Peace out.